jack of all trades. There's so much that we could be asking about. But what I want to start with is sensitivity rating, because this was a new term for me personally, and I'm pretty curious about how it all works. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, for sure. So with my company, SweetBaby Inc., we're a narrative development company. And for me, what that means is everything from writing and narrative design to world building to character development to scripts to punch-ups. And for me, what's one of the most important things that I think I try to bring to any work that I do is representation. Is that feeling of, is this authentic? Is the diversity that we have in this game authentic? Does it come from an honest place? Does it come from a real place? And for me, what sensitivity, the work we do in sensitivity is often tied into the work that we do in narrative, because I don't think they're necessarily two different things. When you find, when you're reading through a story, I'm thinking, okay, one, does the narrative work? And two, how does the narrative represent the players, not the players, but the characters in it? How does it represent the world that it's creating? How are people going to take that world, and how are people going to find themselves in it? So sensitivity reading is looking for blind spots in the work. It's looking for things that could, rub people the wrong way, things that could be insensitive to a certain culture or a certain kind of person or a certain identity, and trying to not only mitigate that, but to craft the story in such a way that, we're not oppressing anybody, we're not being unkind to anyone, and we're representing folks in a positive, supportive, or engaging light.
Are you able to influence how many or in what manner women and minorities are included at the planning stage of a game? Or can you only give feedback on existing characters already in the script?
So for me, that's why I tend to focus, my form of sensitivity reading, risk assessment, and the work that we do on building the narrative. Because I think there are two kinds for me, kinds of sensitivity work. And one of them is that, you are presented with something that's more or less finished, it's already in there, and kind of your job there is to tell someone, okay, this might be offensive, this character feels, inauthentic to the identity that they're supposed to convey, or this, this plot point is a trope that's, have negative associations with a given kind of identity. And that's one kind of work that I used to do a lot more, and I try to do less of it now. Or when I do that kind of thing now, I prefer to, try to spread that work among a team of experts, a team of consultants from different backgrounds who can address, my own blind spots and kind of create a panel on that. Because that's an area where, there's not a lot of creative input that they're necessarily going to allow us to give, because they're so far along. So a lot of the time, that kind of sensitivity work results in, cuts of certain things or slight changes.
That's essentially what SweetBaby Inc. does. That is in no way, shape, form, or fashion an issue with gaming.
But what I prefer to do, and I don't really call it sensitivity, but I think it's just bringing representation to something, is trying to build a narrative and a story that include moments and elements custom made to bring representation and joy to people. Because that's kind of where SweetBaby lands on it. It's that I did a talk at GDC called representation as innovation.
Hey, maybe we can invite white dudes to play as other people and experience different things through someone else's eyes. And if they don't like it, we have to start thinking we're not losing, they're losing, and we're losing because we're going to let them stand in the way of our progress and our innovation.
And for me, the idea that we can create something new, create something exciting, create something fun, if we go in and from the ground up build something that includes everybody, it's a lot stronger.
It's really interesting. I'm kind of curious about, I don't know if you've run into this with Assassin's Creed in particular, but you talked about, tropes and, maybe because this could be a stereotype, or, that this could be harmful to people because there are already certain attitudes maybe associated with it. And these are historical games. So those tropes they are based in history. Is that something that you've run into, or?
I think for something like this, what you have to remember is that the history that we're aware of is heavily biased by the culture in which we live and have lived since then. So when we create stories about colonization, we're generally going to hear from the colonizers. When we tell stories about oppression, we often sugarcoat it because a lot of those oppressors are still systemically and structurally with us today. So we are still influenced. So a lot of the time, I think the problem that we run into in anything historical, any kind of story like that, whether it's a game, whether it's a movie, TV show, whatever it is this feeling that everything we know about the oppression, about the structural, the structure of the society, the stuff that we think is a given, feels natural to us. But anything that feels unlikely or any anomalous things end up getting kind of brushed aside.
After all I told you, it's what you asked for, boy.
You were disrespectful. You were disrespectful, boy. You need to know what it felt like.
Bro, you can't do this. You can't do this to people. This is way too easy to make fun of.
You know how much pain I'm in being a fan of the film? I'm in real pain right now.
And yet,
that's essentially what SweetBaby Inc. does. That is in no way, shape, form, or fashion an issue with gaming.
So when we look at the Victorian era, for example, we look at that and we go, oh, well, that was probably, everybody was white, is what we see in media a lot of the time, right? We look at these things and it ends up becoming super white without actually inviting the fact that there was actual diversity there. There are many instances of people in all levels of society from a ton of different backgrounds. But when we look at it through our lens now, when we start casting something, people go, no, that can't possibly be. It's just, you're just forcing diversity on it. You're just tokenizing people. But
that's essentially what SweetBaby does. That is in no way, shape, form, or fashion an issue with gaming.
Ultimately, that's actually more accurate, but it doesn't look accurate to us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's more limiting also in what kind of stories you can tell. If
yeah,
we're always expecting those same things.
Exactly. There's an expectation that we have. And for me, there's this thing called the Tiffany problem. And it's how I like to talk. It's one of the ways I like to talk about historical diversity. In that the Tiffany problem is that Tiffany was actually a fairly common name hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But if you write about that, if you actually say, hey, I'm going to put a character named Tiffany in my game set, centuries ago, people go, oh, that's such a modern name. That doesn't sound right. So the reality of the situation was, yes, Tiffany was a name back then. Feels wrong and ahistorical if we look at it today. And I think it's the same way when we put diversity into the past. People go, oh no, but you're just putting diversity in. They don't even feel ready because they get exposed to so much, whether it's whitewash, whether it's just colonized media, that they go, oh, there can't possibly have been diversity back then, because my understanding of it was that this was a homogenous time. So I think I look at it like that.
Or they make excuses for it, like, yeah, well, sure, okay, maybe there were some women in World War I that were on the front lines, but it was only in these specific situations, so we shouldn't show it in a game.
Exactly. You have so much of that happening. And for me, there's so many leaps that we already take with history. There are so many things that we decide are true. And so many of the protagonists that we choose for our games are exceptional by their nature. So why not take that further? Why not say that, yeah, we can tell different kinds of stories? And frankly, we see so many of these eras in history through one lens, and we forget that these same stories, same society was experienced by so many different kinds of people. And I would bet a lot of the time that those stories are more interesting. The stories that take place from a perspective that's going to show us things we don't know. I have a book called The Black Victorians, and it's such an interesting read because it's something I've never really seen a lot of the time. I kind of, we all kind of think, okay, well, that was slavery then, and so that was how everybody saw things, but there were incredible things being done all around the world, and we rarely explore that in media because it doesn't fit what we're used to. So I think there's just so many opportunities to kind of change that and to show people both exceptional and unexceptional from different backgrounds.